William, pleasure to have you on the show. You've been one of those people that I've had in the back of my mind for a long time, and I was like, you know what? Let me just reach out here and see. And I've said this a few times where the people I feel like is, oh, there's no way I'll have access to this person, and then they just come back with a really nice, yeah, sure, I'm up for it. I'm like, wow, that's kind of mind blowing.
Well, it's my pleasure. I guess I was one of those people that you thought there's no way he's going to do
Yeah,
this
I think
do
I
this
think
thing, and
yeah, I think it comes from maybe, growing up and watching your work, and you've been in so many of the things that, I've watched and rewatched and loved. And then you kind of just expect, it seems. And I guess as well from being, in Ireland on the European side, it seems very like that's the movies, that's the TV, that's not like
right,
real compared to
not
me.
real people.
Yeah, it's like these are not real people compared to the life I live or who I am. So I do appreciate you taking the time.
No, it's my pleasure. It's my pleasure.
Um, I- like I said, you've had this impressive career. I feel like you've been in pretty much every genre there is to be in now. But horror fans seem to really, really dig your work. What is it about horror that I suppose keeps you kind of coming back to a lot of those projects?
I don't know. Well, for one thing, they ask me to come back.
Yeah,
I tend to go where the work leads me, um, and horror movies have reached out to me again and again. I just did it. I just did one called the Yeti,
yeah,
in Buffalo, which I have no idea. We just finished shooting it, so I don't know whether it's, you know, what stage it's going to be in, or how it will be released. But yeah, when I got to Hollywood, I sort of started in the villain roles, the sort of villain, the bad guy, the heavies, um, and it seemed and it seemed natural that I would. Uh, I don't know. I guess I played them well enough that people kept asking me to go, further and further into the genre. I get scared watching these movies sometimes. Not my own. I don't tend to watch my own films, just because, not because I think they're bad or anything. I just think um, it's a little bit like listening to your own voice on a tape recorder, and
yeah,
you don't you sit there and say, "Why I don't sound like that? How can I don't sound like that?" you know. Um, and you pick it apart because you can't be objective about it. But horror fans have been great to me, in general over my career. I did the Tales from the very first episode of Tales from the Crypt, The Man Who Was Death, and it opened massive doors for me because Frank Darabont was one of the writers on that, who then went on to do um, the Shawshank Redemption and The Mist and The
hmm
Green Mile and so on. And I've had I guess I've had a relationship with horror ever since. That was, yeah, The Man Who Was Death was I guess that qualifies as horror, as a horror movie. Demon Knight, the film Demon Knight, um, is totally down that road, and great fun to play. Great fun. It's just fun to do them.
yeah,
They're. I love digging into the mythology and coming up with characters that are believable in that world, because my philosophy is, if I can get the audience to believe Breaker for even just a little bit, then they'll come along for the ride. They'll stay on board. If they As soon as they stop believing, then it's like, then they can sit back and eat their popcorn, and it's like, yeah.
yeah. They're like tuned out. Yeah, that makes sense. And that
Yeah.
was something I was going to say about Demon Knight and things like that. And I feel like horror fans, like that's such a beloved character, and that film has become like year on year gained more and more audience. It's become classic. And I guess if you were to go
I
back
love
those
that's
things,
my favorite thing too. I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, is it like I was just that's literally what I was going to ask is, I know you said you don't a lot of people don't sit down and watch their own work back or anything like that, but I suppose if you were to think back to then and then see now how all this stuff seems to have a new life, and fans seem to, especially the horror community, like I'm sure you've done some conventions and stuff, and people just go wild and like absolutely adore this stuff, even though it's 30, 40 years ago, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
It's like as new as ever for them.
It's really gratifying. It really is. I just did a Comic-Con in Lexington, Kentucky. And I hadn't done one for 8 years, I think. I hadn't done any of these fan conventions, but I did that one, and I was amazed at how many times Demon Knight came up, or The Mist came up. That people that love horror, people that like to be scared. They're great fans. They're just great fans. They're devoted. And if you can, and it's really cool that a movie like Demon Knight that was made for we didn't cost a great deal of money to make it. We shot it in an airplane hangar in Sherman Oaks, California. With pigeons all up in the rafters, so that we had to scare the pigeons away every time we started to shoot. It was, it wasn't an expensive movie to make, and it was supposed to be one of a trilogy. I think there were supposed to be three. That one, and then Bordello of Blood, and then a third one that I don't know the name of. But it kind of, it opened, and I guess it did all right. It made enough money so that they went ahead and made Bordello of Blood. But, it's wonderful that year after year after year, people keep discovering it and sharing it with their friends. And then it's like, I guess it's a little bit like the Shawshank Redemption that opened, ran for 3 weeks, and closed.
Yeah,
that's it. It's gone.
Seems crazy.
Down without a bubble, as Walter Hill would say. Just down without a bubble, and then it's nominated for all of these awards. And then Forrest Gump wins all of those awards. But people start to discover it on VHS and then on streaming services and so on, and the Turner Classic broadcasts. And little by little, it's just gained momentum. It's just like, holy cow, and it's really great. It's really fun to see, new generations looking at films like Demon Knight and saying, "Oh yeah, that's it. That's just cool as hell."
Do you like you've been in so many different genres, but you've also worked through so many different, I guess, eras of film, and I always hear people talking time and time again about it's I don't know if we're ever going to have that same feeling, that same vibe that we used to get in the 80s, in the 90s, and all this stuff, and everything now seems very refined, very sterile, very CG in a lot of these bigger projects. Is that something that I guess I don't know if you've even thought about it, but do you feel from a professional standpoint, from your point of view in work, that like there was a difference in making some of these movies? Like say something like Die Hard, it feels very of its time, and I feel like a lot of people are like, I wish they would make movies like that again, just now. I'm like, but is that just a sign of the times?
I don't know if it's a sign of the times or if technology is, um, it allows people to do things that you can do things on the computer now that you couldn't. There weren't computers. We didn't, you know, if you want to show a fight on the wing of a plane, you have to
Mm.
build the wing of a plane. You have to put a camera on the wing of a plane and and have a fight. You know, if you're going to throw a guy off a building, you have you have to throw a person off of a building
Yeah.
and pay them to jump. And that's I don't I don't I don't I guess I've thought about this a bit because in a funny way it was more deliberate then. Because you were doing it, the stunts were real and the effects were practical. You know, the blood, the blood was whatever the special effect was going to be, it had to be created physically, and it had to be created in such a way that the camera would buy it, that
Mm.
it would work on film. And the film costs money. You know, you can't do you can't do endless takes and just delete what you did this morning and keep trying until you get it right. It's there's so there, I think there was something. I think maybe it was a little more deliberate. Those stunts had to be planned more carefully and set up more carefully. And when they crashed the plane in Die Hard 2, I think they built a model of an airplane that was 20 feet across and filled it with gasoline and then blew it up. And they had 7 cameras all around it running at high speed so that they could make that explosion last forever.
Yeah.
Uh,
Do you think?
you wouldn't do that today. You
Yeah.
wouldn't have to. You could do it on a computer. Anyone can do it on a computer. And I think maybe there's a bit of overkill.
Mm.
It's too easy to blow things up and destroy buildings and create armies, and it's kind of too easy, so it's in every movie. It's in every Marvel movie. It's in every
Yeah. I
I
do
don't
get what you're
know.
saying.
There's something veritas about. There's an honesty about in the older films. If you actually had to do the had to throw somebody off the roof of a building, there's maybe it feels more real.
Mm.
That's my only thought about it.
Yeah, and I definitely think there's something to that now that you say it. And I've heard a lot of talk recently about authenticity and things like that, and that the audience are loving that idea, and maybe this is why there's a lot of these uh, boutique Blu-ray companies that are re-releasing movies with all these
Mm.
special features and booklets and things, and the fans seem to be eating them up, and I feel like that probably boils down to that, because it's like a new movie comes out, the Blu-ray comes out, it does okay, but then we get a 4-disc Blu-ray of Die Hard 2 or Demon Knight or something like this, The Mist, with a booklet and new interviews and stuff, and it's like sold out like instantly.
Hmm. You mean they're more popular, or
Yeah,
people,
like I feel like,
or audiences gravitate toward those that era, the
yeah,
90s,
like I
80s,
definitely feel like,
80s,
yeah,
90s.
it probably all boils down to, and I think it's a lot to do with what you said, where I definitely think with the success of something like The Substance last year, it kind of shows that, people want to see practical effects and like I guess the realist version rather than everything be CG. And I definitely think there's a crossover point where you can have so much computer generated that it almost looks so real it looks really fake.
Yeah.
If that
Yeah.
makes any sense.
That's sometimes the feeling I get watching newer movies, and I know it's CG, and I know it's perfect. It's beautifully done. You know, that car flips over and bangs against the wall, and it's just gorgeous the way that the way that it's done. But it's like you have you know you have this new, if all you have is a hammer, then everything looks like a nail, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
If all you have is CG, then everything is CG. Well, and I think people get tired of it. It's like, oh, yeah, okay, you blew up another building. um I get it. The guy's on fire, he's running, and he's on fire. As opposed to in the 90s, if the guy was on fire, you set somebody.
Yeah. Yeah.
You actually you put someone in clothes that couldn't catch fire, and then you painted them with some flammable goo, and they did, and then you set them on fire and then put them out. So I don't know. I don't have a good answer for you, but except that I think that sometimes CG is overdone
Yeah.
because you have all these toys, you feel like you have to use them, when the thing that moves you through the story is the story. And the story, if the story is compelling, we'll follow it. We'll go with you. But you have to hook us into the story. The story has to be compelling, because that underlies everything. All the special effects in the world aren't going to save you. All the blood, the hack, you can hack off as many limbs as you want. It won't be as good a movie if there isn't a story, if you don't hook us into a story, a scary story, one that I'm going to have nightmares about, and then use your special effects to tell that story. Not they're not the point. They're just there to make the story better.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does it. That actually makes a lot of sense when you put it in those terms as well. I think it's like
I
it
think of
makes more
the,
sense than just
I think of
doing it.
the movies that the movies that really last, and people keep loving them for years and years and years and years. Um, and even in the horror genre, the Demon Knight has a story. It has a you know it has a real story. Um, Casablanca has a real story. Citizen Kane has a real story. The movies that we hold on to and just they live in they're on the top shelf in our library of cinemas. They tend to have really strong stories. Shawshank has there are no special effects at all.
Yeah.
None. There are no special effects. There's no supernatural anything. What compels people to watch it over and over and over again is the story. The story is so good. And I maybe it's also the hardest thing to come up with. If you have a computer that's if you have all these tools, it must be a great temptation to use them.
Speaking of that, you're like so many people, you've been part of so many iconic roles and characters. I mean, even something like Bill and Ted, that's, that's a lot of people's
Yes.
childhoods, teenage years, and then into maybe they have their own kids at the point when they've seen the newest one.
Yeah.
And I know you spoke earlier about, you don't really like to watch your own movies. It's not really something that you're about. And you likened it to listening to your own voice back, and a lot of people kind of just go, I don't sound like that, or oh God. Um
it's, it's
and,
hard.
and
It's
yeah,
hard.
and I definitely get that. But is there a point where, like, the man behind, because I'm sure you get it a lot, if you're anywhere where it's like, oh my God, it's William Sadler. Oh my God, can I have a picture? Can I do this? Can I do that? But like the man behind all that, like when you're at home, have you ever had a chance or even allowed yourself to sit back and go like, I've been a part of a lot of film history. There's a lot of things that I put my little stamp on. I guess, for want of, and some people cringe when I say this word, but it's like my legacy, I guess. Like it's stuff that cannot be erased.
I've I've thought about that a lot actually recently. As you get older, you start thinking about what you know, it's easy. You you look back. Um, I do more looking back, I guess, these days than I used to. But but I have thought, that when I'm gone, there'll be these there'll be these roles, there'll be these characters will live for a time. I don't know. I don't know how long. Um, Depends on global warming and lots of other things. Um, but yeah, that something that I did has become a part of the fabric of our culture, and it'll continue on. People are going to be teaching um, film classes and talking about and showing Shawshank or whatever. Um, it's gratifying. It I I'm pretty sure that it's nice to have left my stamp, you know, on those characters along the way. I hope I'm not done. Um, I feel like I still have.
Yeah, yeah.
I feel like I still have most of my marbles, and I can still be silly or scary or tell a good story. It's a funny. The odd thing is I just did a movie, I don't know, a couple of years ago with Karen Allen from Raiders of the Lost Ark fame, called A Stage of Twilight. And in A Stage of Twilight, um, I got to play her husband, and it's a drama. It's just a story about this older couple, and he gets a bad diagnosis, and there's no horror in it. There's no action in it. That's the story. But what I found was that my acting has gotten it's it's funny that my I sort of feel like for years they sat me down at the piano and said you can play these keys from here to here, from
Mm.
the we need you to be a villain, and he needs to be this and this and this. And so you're in this box kind of. And then with this movie that I did with Karen, A Stage of Twilight, I got to play the entire keyboard. You know, it was what was really fun for me, and I think it's fun for the audience as well. But um, but the acting, what have learned about acting over the years, is is making me a better and better actor. Um, so I hope I'm not finished. Um, if you're out there and you've written a great horror movie script, see if you can't get it to me, because
Yeah, and I not
I'm
to
not
cut you off. Yeah, I
Yeah.
didn't mean it in that sense of it being done. I just meant like obviously you're still well ingrained in the film business, and I was just interested to see, had you ever, I'm always fascinated to see, is that something that somebody even, has a chance to, or gives himself the time to even sit down and go, you know what, actually, I have,
There's a
and not
lot.
feel like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm so great. I just mean in the sense of being like, wow, I'm like, I have actually maybe all these people that are constantly, excited and happy when they see me. And they're, like you said, they're so passionate about something, a role you might have had in a movie that was
Yeah.
30, 40 years ago. And to see that maybe go, maybe there's something to this. And I was going to lead on to something else I was going to ask about,
Yeah.
about your craft. You have been, the funny character, the goofy character, the really serious character, the dramatic character, the scary character. Is that something that you've always had in acting, where you can kind of go between that massive range of characters? Sometimes I feel like people, for better or worse, kind of get pigeonholed into like you've become like the scary guy, and we don't want to really give you a chance to be the funny guy or be the, the nice guy.
I think, well, Hollywood is Hollywood tends to pigeonhole people because there's a lot of money at stake. And producers, if they've got millions of dollars sunk into this film and years of pre-production, getting the script ready and so on, by the time they get to casting, they look around and they say, well, they look for people that have done it before. You know, this guy's been really scary before. No, he can really be scary. I think that's what we need here. They're not. It's not their job to expand my, you know, what I can do as an actor. What expanded what I can do as an actor is that I spent 11 years in the theater in New York,
Mm.
on Broadway and doing off Broadway and studying acting at universities and what have you. That you learn, or I've learned anyway, that this stuff is all available. It's all in. It's creating characters, and I guess I'm a character actor. Uh, I That's what I do. I create um, I create these people, and they can, you know, I like to go from funny movies to serious films to scary films to I think is I mean, that's kind of a dream. I didn't quite get pigeonholed into, oh, he's got to be the villain. We can never You can never cast him as the principal of the school. Why would you do that? You know, um, and you mentioned Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, where I played Death. Um, one of the cool things about that was that the role, he starts out being really scary in the film.
Yeah,
He
yeah, yeah.
they're dead and they're facing death standing in front of them. Um, he's about as scary as you can get, and you must play. You must play. You must beat me in a game, and he, and then of course he starts play, and then they start beating him at all the games, and Battleship and Clue and Twister and all this stuff, and he falls apart. He just like crumbles in front of your eyes. He's like, um, you know, he's not so scary now. He's petulant and a cheater and best two out of three and best way. He's like,
Yeah.
he's completely screwed up and law and he's not as scary as he was. And then by the end of the movie, he's along for the ride. He's trying to help him. Then he joins the band and he wants to sing with the band. It's like he's gone. it's a great character arc, you know, what they call a character arc. It starts here and then it
Yeah.
goes way over to here. So by the end of the movie, you love this guy. He's like, you know, doing the Reaper rap and playing the bass, and he's in the band, and he's in the band now. So and he's not scary at all. So I like that was I don't, and I'm not sure that that wasn't, you know, that Hollywood didn't see that movie and then say, oh, we can't cast him now as the villain in
Yeah, I know what you mean.
you know, Lethal Weapon 7 or whatever, you know, because now the world knows that he's silly. You know.
Do you think that's down to you being able to, I guess, live in those characters? Because I feel like over the last couple of weeks, I've been revisiting some of those movies, and I can't help but feel like I'm watching one movie and I feel like this deep emotion, but then I watch this next movie and I'm like smiling and laughing, and then I watch the next movie and I'm kind of terrified, and I'm like, all these feel believable to me, if you know what I mean. Like I don't look at it and go, okay, that's, you know, that's the guy who's the funny guy, but now he's the serious guy. So I don't really take it serious anymore. It's like every role you've been in feels like a lived in character.
Thank you. That's well, that's I think that's the job. I like that's always been the job. It doesn't matter what the character who he is. That's your job is to figure out, you know, take him apart and figure out what kind of person would say that, you know, what do they need in this film, and it's one of the things that I've always loved about acting, and it's one of the reasons I got into it was because you spend a lot of you get to you're always working backwards. You get the script and it says the character says this, you know, this sentence. Or the character's in an argument with somebody, and you have to sit there and figure out what kind of person would say that, and how would you have to feel to say that to somebody, and then what you keep working backwards toward who the person is. And even though I've never murdered anybody, and I've never crashed an airplane, and I have never done lots of the things that I've done in movies personally, thank God. You as an actor, you kind of throw yourself into it, or I do, and the more complete you can create, the more complete a character you can create, the further you throw yourself into it, the more believable it becomes. And the more believable it is, the better the film works. And people, like I was saying before, if the people watching the film can believe you just a little bit, you know, that you're Haywood in Shawshank, or you're, you know, Breaker in Demon Knight, or whatever, the President in Iron Man 3. If they can, the more they can believe that character, the more they'll come along for the ride. They'll stay on board.
Yeah, they're invested
to see. Yeah, because you've invested your more of yourself into it too. You know, so I don't know. It's kind of acting 101, I guess.
Yeah, and I think like the audience, even on a very baseline level, obviously don't know the minutia of it all, but can definitely feel that through the performance and the screen, whether it's something like it's worth my while buying into. If this person doesn't seem to care, then why should I care about?
Exactly. And I think audiences have a built-in shit detector. You know, they just
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
they'll go. You know, they'll.
Yeah.
You know, we all do. We've all met people in life who are, you know, they're just bull crap artists, and
Yeah.
you you know so you have to be honest. The camera doesn't camera you can't It's hard to lie to a camera.
Mm.
Camera sees every tiny little flicker, so you got to be it has to be pretty honest.
Yeah, and I get what you mean about special effects and CG and stuff. That can fix other things, but if the story and then the characters themselves are not there, everything else is just kind of superficial noise. Um, you've had so many different roles, and it would just interest me, like how long do you like to sit with a character, you know, before you have to go and shoot, you know, to, like you said, that reverse engineering to really figure out, okay, what kind of guy would say this? What kind of
Yeah.
person would behave like that or make that decision or whatever?
Couple of weeks, it depends on which is funny because usually casting happens just before they start filming. So you 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 meet the guy that's going to play your brother
Yeah.
the night before you film the big scene where the two of you have a fight about your father, you know, and it has to look. You have to believe that they grew up together and they've known each other for 25 years or whatever, and but there just isn't any rehearsal. There's almost never any rehearsal for films, unlike theater. Um, you know, you meet the woman that's playing your wife the night before you start filming the scenes with her. So you have to kind of you prepare yourself, but you also um, you you have to reach an agreement with the other actors about pretty quickly about how far do you want to go. You know, what do you think? What do you How violent is this scene? You know, how bad does your character want this thing, or whatever? And you have to have these little agreements with your fellow actors, because you just met them. you
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
you didn't you haven't played around in rehearsals and seen what the other guy's going to do and what have you, and you know you don't want to step on their toes, and you don't want them to get in the way of what you think, the way you think it ought to go. But it is a process. There's a sort of a social contract that you make with your fellow performers. Um, where how far do you want to take it? How far do you want to because there are lines, and especially with men and women as well. I did a short film called Another Life with an actress named Julie Tuck, who's and we had to wrestle, and she was wearing this little slip, and there was no rehearsal. There's no time to rehearse. It's just the camera's going to roll and we're going to go for it. And we had we had to we had to get together before the cameras rolled and say, how far, how far is okay for you? Because I don't want to make you feel, I don't want you to be uncomfortable. You're a professional in this, um, and without saying, can I touch you here? Can I touch you there? I said, I'm gonna wrestle with you and drag you down the hallway. Um,
Yeah.
you good with that? Um, I'll try. I'll try hard. I'll try very hard not to hurt you at all, but it's going to get physical, and she was fantastic. She was, you know, she said, absolutely, go for it, because I'm going to. And as a result, she fought like crazy. She fought, you know, she fought like her life depended on it. And I fought and I rose to the challenge and dragged her down the hallway with her fighting all the way. And the shot works, and the scene works, and the film works. You know, and we both walked away thinking, well, you know, I respected this other professional. You know, I have great admiration for, you know, she had courage, and she knew where her lines, where her boundaries were, and so on. We could work together well. But that conversation had to happen. Because I've also seen instances where there's no conversation, and an actor goes too far with an actress, and she freaks out and runs back to her trailer, and she's, you know, she's mortified.
Yeah.
She's
Yeah.
mortified and humiliated in front of the whole crew, because of something that he did, because they hadn't talked about it. They hadn't, you know, they hadn't decided where the boundaries were going to be. So anyway, I don't know how we got off on that, but it's part of making the thing believable.
Yeah.
Again, if we can get you to believe it, you'll come along.
Yeah, you're right.
You'll get sucked into the story, and when it's over, you'll go, oh, geez, oh, I didn't see that coming, you know. And that's our job.
Did you, when you decided that acting and film was something that you really wanted to be a part of, did you get any pushback from friends, family, close ones? And sometimes I feel like, you know, I've heard that people said, you know, maybe close family members or something like that, coming from a good place, would say things like, not realizing the effect it might have, you know, saying, well, you know, maybe that's just a dream. Maybe you should get a real job, and maybe don't do this because it's not guaranteed and we don't know how it'll work out. And I guess they're trying to protect you, but in actual fact, they're kind of, I don't know, crushing your dreams and your soul.
I think early on in my career, not even my career, I was still in college. My father insisted that I get a teaching degree at the same time that I was studying acting. So I got a teaching degree. I'm a certified speech teacher in the state of New York, which I've never used, but there it is. He said, you got to have something to fall back on, because, you know, this is not a, you know, there are no guarantees. It's not like, you know, I'm going to get a degree in engineering and I should be able to get a job or get a degree as a lawyer or something. More guaranteed work, I suppose. I want to be an actor. Well, 95% of them aren't working at any one time, and I don't think I got any pushback. My wife, I had done, after doing 11 years or so of theater in New York, which doesn't pay very well at all. It's very, very gratifying, and it's a great training ground, because no one can yell cut. No one can save your sorry ass. If you pull it off, you carry this thing for 2 hours, you and your friends on that stage. You create it 8 times a week for that audience that just paid $250 for their tickets or whatever, you know. And it doesn't matter whether you have a headache, you have a fight with your wife. It doesn't matter. You pull up your socks and make something happen out there. and that's great training ground. But my wife said about the movies, she said, you know, you could, you could make money doing this. like, like the movies, the movie money was just like I was making so little in New York for so long. You know, we had a tax returns that said we made like $8,000 for the year. You know, $10,000 for the whole year. It's like, which maybe sounds like a lot of money, but it's not a lot of money in New York. And you know, and then the movies come along, and the movies started waiving paychecks and things, and we didn't really want to leave New York. We had an apartment in the East Village, and we didn't really want to give it up. But they kept doubling the money and then doubling the money again, and it was like, you got.
Yeah.
I was finally like, I'm gonna kick. You know, I'm gonna think I may regret one day if I don't see what this movie business is about. So I went out and shot Project X. We had our baby. Then I was offered a TV series, and they paid us to move to the West Coast. So yeah, no one said you shouldn't try it for the movies, because you know it'll break your heart, and it's really hard to get into. It is hard to get into, and I don't know. I have no idea how to help young actors make the leap, but no one stood at no one said, no, you should just you should stay in New York where they love you, and just do theater. And
Was it difficult to juggle, you know, your personal life and your real life all these years, and be, you know, not just I guess the pressure and like the effort it takes to get into these roles, but then also, you know, outside of that, it's like to be the quote unquote famous guy, and because some people treat it like that, they kind of don't treat you like a person. It's more like, oh, I've seen that person in a thing, and I'm just gonna approach them with a wife and kid, and I've seen it happen sometimes, and I've been like, makes me a bit uncomfortable. Maybe people are out for a meal or something, and people just kind of come in, and I get it, they're excited and they feel like it's my one chance to see this person, but
yeah.
is it difficult to juggle, you know, because I think people forget again, it's like there's a whole person, there's a whole life, there's all these experiences that you're going through behind the screen, as well as trying to juggle all of that.
There is a bit of juggling, and I've been fortunate my whole career that I've sort of flown underneath the radar, that I can go to a grocery store and shop, and people will come up to me from time to time. They're usually very polite, and you know, I loved you in Demon Night. You know, they'll whisper it so that not everybody can hear, or you know, or they'll ask for an autograph, and I try to be gracious about it.
Mhm.
You know, I appreciate that you know, I appreciate that they're fans, that they like what I did. But I'm not in the same position that Tom Cruise is in, or Denzel Washington is in, or say, you know, even Liam Neeson, I guess, where you really can't go anywhere. You can't just go to a ball game, or go to the store. There's going to be, you know, you need, you know, I did I did Julius Caesar in New York with Denzel Washington a few years back,
Mm-hmm.
and um, and he had to have a bodyguard. There had to be a guy who would keep the fans, just to get from the door of the theater over to his car. And he was very gracious. He would sign autographs for the people that waited in line. He would sign every program for anybody that wanted it. But when it was over, when it was over, it was over. And I watched him try to get from the door of the rehearsal hall to his car, and it was like, 5 different people tried to attach themselves. Oh my God, they're like yelling, and the commotion surrounding him. That I've not ever. I I I guess I like to think that I'm fortunate in that regard. I can also have the other life. I can go to a hardware store and buy what I need, and you know, um, and maybe someone will come up and say something, and maybe someone won't. Um, but I don't get. No, I don't get how it is a juggle. I mean,
Mm.
you're because what you do for a living is very public.
Yeah.
It's red carpets, and it's parties, and it's film openings, and it's on television every night. It's what you do is very public, but um, I have I've managed somehow to keep my private uh, my private life pretty private.
Do you think as well that comes from having like that close knit family and stuff? And just you guys kind of have your own life separate. That there's
Yeah,
no spillover, because I've heard some stories of people, and it's like some people even credit it with nearly ruining their personal life because it just
mhm.
becomes so much, or they maybe get so into the art, or things become just so crazy that it
It
just
would be hard.
consumes it.
I can. I'm sure it ruins lives. It ruins private lives, personal lives. Can you imagine being married to somebody who, you know, just 24/7, their phone is going, it's an interview, it's a press thing, it's a movie opening, this person that you spend your life with is being pulled is constantly being pulled away to do this and do that, and I have to go to London now to do you know this movie and what have you, and whatever your if it's your wife or your husband, if you want kids, they're in school, you're going to pull them all out of school and take them with you to the set. You there is a there is there is a juggling that goes on. I tried to take I tried to take my family with me whenever uh, that was possible. If I was going to be in Mansfield, Ohio, all summer long to shoot Shawshank, they came. I shot for the first month by myself, so I could establish the character, and then they came and enjoyed the rest of the summer. Um, and we sort of did it that way, so I could include them you know, I could include them somewhat. But yeah, I can't even imagine what Tom Cruise or people like that,
Mm.
people, people with that much fame. I don't know how,
Yeah. It
I
seems
don't
like
know,
it's a
I don't know
creative
how you
thing.
juggle all of that. You just like, you're not, they own you. The
Yeah.
audience is
Yeah.
going to scream every time you step outside the door of your apartment, and paparazzi, when your life, it isn't your, you don't have a life anymore. You know, you don't have a private life anymore. Um, you belong to People Magazine and podcasts in Ireland, and
Which is when it gets weird, right? It's
it
like,
gets weird. No, it
yeah,
doesn't.
but
No.
it is though. It's that thing of like, um, and
Yeah.
you have to kind of remember that. And sometimes I don't know, like, people don't like some of these questions, but I truly am kind of fascinated with like we kind of sometimes forget as an audience member, like this is a person, you know, with kids and with a family and with a, you know, we're seeing these characters and going, oh, you know, he's that person. I remember
He's,
him this. I
he's
love him. I want to tell him I
yeah,
love him so much.
right.
And it's like, you know, they have real people behind the scenes. Is that something that I guess, you know, alongside your wife, you guys were always quite in tune with like decisions for, you know, okay, we're going to do this. And, you know, you mentioned having a child, and it's like,
Yeah.
I feel like if I was in that position, I'd be worried. I'd be like, oh, you know, okay, we've got the kid, you know, we're married and things. And now what if I get pulled here and they can't come? Or what if this, is that always something that you guys, I don't want to say sat down and talked about, but, you know, you were always kind of on the same tune, I guess.
Well, we weren't always on the same tune. There were times when I felt I should go do this thing because it would be good for my career, and she felt, you know, that it wasn't, or or this is, you know, you're gonna miss. And I've missed birthdays. I've missed, you know, dance recitals. I've missed, you know, there are things. There's a price. There's a there's a price you pay. Um, but most of the time, we would we would discuss. We would come to some agreement. You know, um, the money is this. This is the amount of time that they need. So I would fly out here, and I would, you know, I could come back then, and you know, give her all, give her give her the money. Um, there's, you know, yeah, we weren't always on the same wavelength over these things. There was friction occasionally, but I mean, I guess there's friction in any marriage. So
Yeah.
I'm
And someone told me,
I'm not alone in that. But you know, you have to, um, any job, you know, any job
mm,
that takes you away. You're a trucker, you know. I'm on the road. That's my job. I have to be gone. You know, I'm going to be on the other end of the country.
yeah, and that's just
You
the way
know,
it
I'll
is.
see you in a few weeks or whatever. You know, so there is always that friction, and you feel awful about the things that you've missed, and there are lots of phone calls. You know, that
Mhm.
helps. Phone calls every night, say goodnight to the kids and that sort of thing, and then bring them out to the set, fly them out. Kids love the set
Yeah, that's got to be nice.
because there's craft service, and there's free candy, and there's free. It's like there's
Yeah,
all.
that's got to be
It's
nice.
like, and you know, and the other actors in the show make a fuss over your children, and set them up with a headphones so they can watch dad do this scene or whatever. Um, you know, involve, let them be involved as much as they can. I think that helps a lot. You know, that's what my dad does.
Yeah, yeah. Which I mean, it's a pretty cool thing to have dad to do, to be honest.
Yeah.
Someone told me before as well, you know, when you're saying about sacrifices and things, and someone once told me about, you know, it's there's always going to be a trade off and always going to be a sacrifice, and you know, in a way, you kind of have to try and look at it from the point of view of, well, like if I'm in a position to kind of choose what my sacrifice is, it's probably a better place to be than have somebody choose it for you. As in having no choice of being able to do that. Um, And to move forward to now, I guess what excites you now? Like what keeps you? I feel like a lot of people would look at you and go, you've done it all. It's like, why don't you just ride off into the sunset and just, sit on the porch and just like enjoy what is it? Is it truly just a passion for what you've always done that kind of keeps that fire burning where you're like, I'm not finished. I don't want to, I don't want to hang it up. It's just something that I still enjoy.
I think I I spent my entire childhood running around the barn where I grew up, diving out of the hayloft with a BB gun and coming up firing and making up stories.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's been doing this is one of the most fun things and creative things that I can imagine. I still enjoy it, and I'm probably better at it now than I was when I start. I mean, not probably. I'm sure I am. I know more. I know more about myself. I have more. I have more crayons in my box than I ever used to have. And I'm not at all afraid to use them. So some of it is just that it's fun. It's more fun now, which is ironic because, your legs hurt and you don't have the energy that you used to have. Now, you have more wrinkles. But the other thing that I like doing, if I couldn't act again, if somebody said you can never do this again, that's the end of it, I would focus on my songwriting and my poetry. I've been writing poetry. I've been writing short stories. I've been writing, and I've been writing and recording songs. I've been doing that for ages and ages, since the 90s. And I put on an album, William Sadler, The Kitchen Tapes. You can get, which your audience, if you want to check it out, it's on iTunes, it's on Spotify, it's on, Apple Music, it's all over the place. However, if you go to therealwilliamsadler.com and click music, therealwilliamsadler.com, then I will send you the CD, and the money goes to St. Jude's Children's Hospital for kids, cancer hospital for children. So
Wow.
I don't make any money on it at all. In fact, I spent a lot of money making it. But they're songs, and they're songs that they're funny and they're sweet, and some of them are romantic and some of them are, and bawdy, but that's a fun album, and there's another one in the works. I have another album's worth of songs that I've recorded that I'm getting ready to put out a second album. But anyway, William Sadler, The Kitchen Tapes is the name of it.
For everybody listening, the links will be down below in the description, so I'll make that really easy for everybody. You won't actually have to go.
Thank you.
The links will be down below. I'm fascinated by that because I find a lot of times when I talk to people who are into the arts and creative things, they always have these other passions as well that kind of align with the creative mind, much like you mentioned, music, poetry, short stories, and I love hearing that, and hearing that you can nearly feel the passion, even though we're miles and miles and miles apart. You can like feel that passion and that care.
Well,
do you feel like as well that that's something that's kind of I guess kept you younger and more energized than maybe you would see some people, and they just kind of, I don't want to say give up on life, but it I don't know, it breathes life into you, and it makes you kind of a little bit excited, and you can do something. I mean, to give that money to St. Jude's, that's another thing that I'm sure there's lots of people out there. There's lots of producers and different things. I'm sure that if they heard that would be like, no, William, we can just make money and we can just not do that. And to do something like that through the passion of it, and then to just hand it somewhere else and go, you take that.
I think you have to remain creative. You have to keep learning. If there's any secret to this at all, is you have to keep learning. I inherited my mom's piano that her parents bought her in 1935. I can't play the piano, but I'm trying to teach myself some piano, at this age. I'm never going to play Rachmaninoff, I'm never going to do piano concerts, but the act of creating, write those poems. It doesn't matter if they ever get published, write them and share them with your family if you want to. The songs, I love the money that comes in for St. Jude's. That seems perfect. I don't need another career. I don't want another career as a singing star. But the songs are fun, and the songs are pretty, and I have wonderful violinists and a guitar players and a piano guy that used to play for John Lennon. I get some wonderful musicians to play underneath the songs that I've written, so they're fun to listen to. But yeah, I think that thing that you keep creating, I think it does keep you young. And I have a porch with rocking chairs, I haven't used it yet. I haven't had time to sit in them and just rest on my laurels. I don't know how many years I have left, or maybe it's months. Who the hell knows? But creating the roles that I've created was the most fun stuff I've ever done. Creating these songs and getting them recorded with people that can play and make them sound great. That's fun. If I'm, I think it does. I really think it keeps your brain alive. It keeps you looking forward and looking out, and not closing off and closing off and closing off until you're.
And I love when I hear that, because it's quite infectious, I think, and it has nothing to do with age or where you're at in your career, or if you've even, there's lots of people out there that maybe tried to do something and it didn't work out, and they ended up having to just accept that and change to something else and whatever. But I think when you hear somebody like yourself talk so like genuinely and kind of raw, it's quite infectious for other people to go, oh, okay, well, so I don't have to just pack it up then and say, well, that excited kind of maybe childish, naive part of me has to go away now, and I just have to be like, plod along.
No, you keep your childhood in your pocket and take it out and play with it. You have to keep playing. That's all. You have to. It doesn't matter. I'll never be a published, poet, laureate. Whatever. If that happened, that would be icing on the cake. What was the really fun part was the creation. Anything that happens after that is just gravy.
I have one or two more questions before I let you go. Did you ever consider? Did you ever consider? This sounds like such a pretentious thing to maybe ask someone as well. But the idea of like I don't know, like telling your life story in and not so much in a vain way, but maybe more much like I feel like this conversation over the last hour has kind of done. I'm sure I know I have, and I can guarantee that multiple other people I will get messages going, you know, that thing that William said really resonated with me, or that story he told about that thing really made me feel good.
Toby, give me a few more minutes, okay? Okay. Sorry.
No, you're fine. You know, and I asked that question not from anything to do with money, to do with, you know, trying to be vain or trying to be like, oh, you should listen to my life story because it's so great. But I feel like a lot of people could take a lot of things maybe from some of your like life experiences.
Have I ever considered
Yeah.
like writing a memoir? I've thought about it, and there is something that feels just a little pretentious about it. There are things that I could say. There, I have thought about it. I haven't attempted it. I haven't sat down and started to out. You know, this is my childhood, or this is my. You know, this is how my acting career started. Um, I don't know. I guess I've been too busy doing it
Yeah,
to,
yeah, yeah. Which is a
to
good complaint, I guess.
like, so maybe that's a good excuse. Uh, it would be interesting, I guess, to somebody might find it interesting. I like biographies of
Hmm.
people that I admire.
Yeah.
Um, I enjoy reading the strange things that happened along the way that made them who they are, and you know, Marlon Brando and all of these people that have had extraordinary careers or done amazing things on film. But I haven't yet succumbed to the need to write a memoir. I've thought about acting, and this also feels a little pretentious, but talking about acting in you know, things that I've learned along the way that might help young actors not make the mistakes that I've made.
Mm.
Um, Maybe that's a better way to approach it. I thought I've thought, well, maybe I could do a memoir that was really about, um, you know, not kind of a sort of a how-to about acting, as well as just a list of, and then this happened to me, and then this happened to me, and then this happened to me. You
Yeah,
know,
because I definitely I don't know, just from speaking with you, and I just from my own personal, I definitely think there's a lot of things that people would take from something like that, and maybe it seems a little bit again, maybe that comes across like uh the audience owning you, even the suggestion of something like that. But I feel like that there's, you know, there's probably a lot of good that could come from that for other people, much the same as you mentioned, like with the music and stuff. I think when people hear things like that, some of that stuff gets left behind, and it's like, oh, you know, we want to talk about this, we want to talk about Bill and Ted, we want to talk about Die Hard, and then forget that there's also these other things that are
yeah,
there that like might make people go, you know what, I'll be okay, or you know, maybe let me try that, and maybe I'll be okay with that's my version of it. I mightn't get it the way I
yeah.
wanted it, but I'm okay this way.
I think no, I think that's a creative effort as well that I just haven't gone there. I've thought about it, like a memoir or something. I don't know how much. And if I'm going to do it, I should do it before I forget all this crap that you know, a mind is a terrible thing to waste. and 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 as this stuff recedes into, you know, it becomes fuzzier and fuzzier as the
And
fish,
I'm sure there's a lot of it there. You've probably lived
the
hundreds of
fish that
lifetimes.
I caught gets bigger and bigger and bigger with every time I tell the story. You know, it's that kind of thing.
Well, I mean, you've probably lived 100 lifetimes in not even one yet, so I guess that's a good thing. Final question then before I let you go is, I normally ask why horror, but I feel like that's very pigeonhole kind of question for you and for what you've done. Maybe I would maybe structure it as like more of the medium of like why film? What is it about the film industry and that way of storytelling that what does it mean to you? I suppose from your creative aspect, but then also as a maybe an audience member as well. Why do you think it resonates?
I think, well, film was a big part of my growing up. I was, when I watched those movies that I watched, Ben-Hur and, The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance and Jason and the Argonauts and all these movies from back in the 50s. When growing up, these people all seemed larger than life. They all just, it was magic. It was really magic to sit in a dark room and go on this adventure with Jason and the Argonauts or whatever. So there was that. There was always a part of me that wanted to be. I wanted to go on that adventure. I wanted to be a part of that adventure, and that was the playing in the barn thing that I did. I think I made up my own movies in my head,
Yeah.
and I was acting. I've been rehearsing for this career my whole life. There's also the legacy thing that you said. The question is why film? Because film, for one thing, film goes on. It's going to go on long after I'm gone, I think. Some of these films will still be worth watching. And that's good. And that's nice to know. That's like you've left a little mark somewhere, and people will remember, or people's lives, people will still laugh at Bill and Ted, years from now. The other thing about film, which I didn't know when I started, was that you can there's a power in film. I did Biloxi Blues on Broadway, a play on Broadway for like a year and a half, 8 shows a week, sold out audiences. I think more people saw Demon Knight in the first 2 days that it opened than saw that entire run of that play. More people saw one episode of, CSI or whatever, and then saw a year and a half of play. So it has a power. It has, and that's why that's where the money is, because it reaches an audience, or it can reach an audience that is global. But the other thing is, in terms of acting, when the camera is that close, and what I realized was that all you really have to do, there's this wonderful freedom there, that all you have to do is think the thing. All you have to do is let the penny drop in your head, and the audience will see it in your eyes. And because of that, like I don't have to make it all up or show it. I don't have to do it. I don't have to do anything. What I have to do is listen and just be there. Just really be there for the camera. And the camera will see this world of stuff going on in my head, in the character's head, that that's hard to do on stage. You have 1,100 people in the audience. It's hard for them all to see the penny drop. You have to somehow make it bigger, somehow make it clear to the people in the back row, you know. Whereas on film, you can almost, it's almost like a novel. You can almost see the character thinking, and which is very powerful, and I find it very freeing. There's like it's like there's this universe that's available to the actor if you let yourself be there for the camera, and that's for me the biggest difference between film and theater is that freedom, you know. And they can yell cut. They can, you know, they can say, no, that's enough. We get it. You know, and or you can do it again. You know, you can. I do enjoy film. It took me 2 or 3 films to get the. I mean, it's taken me a number of films to get the hang of it, but the more I understand about cameras, the more I understand what Walter Hill was trying to tell me on my very first experience with cameras. You know, that this just a face. You don't have to show me anything. I can. You have to be there. That's all. And camera will do the rest.
I love that. William, it's been a pleasure and an honor. You're a legend. You've been so gracious with your time over the last couple of weeks trying to get this thing lined up. And I do wish you all the best. And I genuinely mean it. I would love to stay in touch, and I would love to do this again at some point down the line.
Wow.
Like I said, I could, being selfish, I could keep you here all day and ask a million questions about, you know, not anything to even do with movies. That would fascinate me, and I hope everyone else feels the same and takes something from this like I have.
Wow.
For everybody listening, the links will be down below in the description. I do implore people to maybe check that out and, you know, and have a look at that, because some of what you said today really resonated with me, and I know there's, you know, some other stuff that life stuff that you have gone through, and that some of myself and other people have gone through as well. And there's you know, there's little things that you mightn't think that somebody takes and goes, you know what, if that person can be okay, maybe I can be okay. And, you know, it's kind of as weird as it sounds, it's comforting sometimes to feel that, which is nice. So I genuinely mean it when I say it's been a pleasure and an honor.
Thank you. I've enjoyed it too.
And
write to me. I'll come back on your show.
Yeah, of course, and I will. I would love to have you back.
We can do this again if you like.
Yes, I would love to. Like I said, I wish you all the best for the coming year, and I can't wait to see what's next.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, William. Bye-bye.